There's a power within you. It lifts your life to its highest level. It brings success, companionship, happiness, peace of mind. And this power, as you tap into it, it responds to you because this power is within you. And that's why I always say, spirituality rocks. It's always a pleasure to be with you at the New Thought Spiritual Center of Eastern Long Island. Nicholas, Joseph, prayer chaplains, and I want to say a shout out to Reverend Kathy Caputo, staff minister with the Center for Spiritual Living Hicksville. She is also associate minister of the Guiding Light Foundation, of which I am the founder and director. For those of you new to the center, New Thought teaches there is one ultimate loving energy that is present in all that exists. Some call this power God, spirit, source, infinite intelligence, divine love. Whatever you choose to call it, this is not a personality that is outside of us. This is a power that is within us. We are inherently spiritual beings having a human experience. It was Ralph Waldo Emerson who said, what lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. New Thought teaches that we co-create with God, that our thoughts create our realities. We believe that we live in an abundant, unlimited universe, and that within us lies all the wisdom, love, and power needed to create a full and joyous, prosperous life. And so to the extent that we learn to control our mental states, we automatically control our environment. And so then New Thought empowers us. It empowers us to create a personal, intimate, no intermediary needed connection, relation with God, realizing that the highest God and the innermost God is one God, and that we are to take full and complete responsibility for our lives, and that we are not victim of our circumstances. We are actually powerful, creative beings. We taught that it is not only our right, but our responsibility to be all that we came here to be. And that's what New Thought teaches. And now I'm going to teach you. The talk title today is I Am Listening. Come on. I am listening. Come on, put your hand up like you're taking an oath. I am listening. I am listening. Listening to what? Listening to our intuition. Dr. Ernest Holmes, in his book entitled Science of Mind, he was a great philosopher, created the philosophy called Science of Mind. You can check it out for yourself, page 342 and 603. Intuition is God in us, revealing to us the realities of being. And just as instinct guides the animal, so would intuition guide us if we only would allow it to do so. So intuition remains in the background and waits for recognition. The Spirit always is with us if we would sense its presence. Ernest Holmes. Now, then I decided I should look up Merriam-Webster, the dictionary, and it says intuition is a natural ability or power that makes it possible to know something without any proof or evidence. A feeling that guides a person to act in a certain way without fully understanding why. Intuition is something that is known or understood without proof or evidence. It is innate or instinctive knowledge. I like to call intuition your GPS, your God's piloting system. So then, intuition then is our non-linear intelligence system. It is our ability to have information and knowingness and ideas that are outside our current information base. And in order to hear our intuition, Ernest Holmes said, our part is to be ready and willing to be guided into the truth and liberty. All doubt and fear must go, and in its place must come faith and confidence, because we are led by the Spirit into all good. I have some examples of innate and instinctive knowledge. Once a year at mating time, the male brush turkey in Australia. I think I've been a little distracted by British lately. Okay. And sure, they gather piles of brush and leaves, and he and his mate, they build a nest on the ground together. And this, where they lay their eggs. And so the female lays her eggs in the nest and sits on them. It's the male's job to keep the nest at a certain temperature by adding and removing leaves every single day. Now you see, the eggs will only hatch if the temperature in the nest remains constant. So during the day when the sun is high, the bird removes the leaves from the nest, and evening when night falls, he brings the leaves back because the temperature drops. Now the scientists have studied these birds and have found that the temperatures in those nests never vary by more than 1 degree. How crazy is that? And how does the male brush turkey from Australia know how to regulate the temperature so precisely? Intuition. It's his innate instinctive knowledge. Think about the salmon. The salmon innately, instinctively knows to swim upstream. Homing pigeons innately, instinctively know where home is. Nature has infused the monarch butterfly with a similar instinctive nature and a sense of direction. In the fall, hundreds and thousands of those beautiful butterflies, they migrate south. And they gather on tree trunks and large branches, and they hibernate even though they've never been to that particular glen before. And then they leave in the spring, never to return. And they leave their way, they wing their way north to lay eggs, and then they pass on. Their offspring are born with the same inner programming that directs them to show up at the exact same glen the next year. Why? Intuition. Come on, talk with me. Please talk with me. Okay, so that same innate and instinctive guidance system is encoded in our true nature. Intuition is readily available to us all. It's a divinely natural faculty within every person. Holmes said, quote, "Intuition is God in us, revealing to us the realities of being, and just as instinct guides the animal, so would intuition guide us if we would allow it to do so." Intuition remains in the background and waits for recognition. The Bible says, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock. The Spirit is always with us if we would but sense its presence." End quote. I want to invite you to expand your thinking about intuition and allow that there are many ways that we can be divinely guided. Perhaps it's something someone said to you, or maybe you saw a bumper sticker, or some kind of synchronicity where we're thinking about something and maybe a friend calls and talks about what we are thinking about. Our intuition, our guidance may come directly, or it may be indirectly. Perhaps it's a conversation or even the inspiration of a great piece of music. Maybe it's something we've read or it's something that we've seen. Could even come in a dream. But it will come when we have the willingness to listen. I am listening. Now, sometimes the voice of intuition comes as pictures, it comes as feelings, even fragrances and sounds. And as you listen, you will begin to recognize the intuition. Now, what people have often asked me about intuition is, how do I know that the guidance I'm getting is intuition versus some crazy wonka-bonks idea? Well, think for a moment of a close friend. If your phone was ringing and he or she calls you and they start talking without identifying themselves, and even if you hadn't heard the voice in years, you've heard that voice so many times that you would recognize it instantly. Well, the voice of God, Spirit, infinite intelligence within you, it's actually no different really. You need only listen, and over time, as you practice listening, you develop a way of recognizing it. Just as you know your dear friend's voice, over time, you will be able to distinguish immediately the distinctive resonance of that still small voice that it's called. Like I said, it could be a feeling, it could be a sense. Now, the sense that you're being guided. So if you're asking the question, how do I know if it's my intuition? Then all that says is that you have more practice to do in listening. No judgment, just information. Meditation is very important when it comes to intuition. One of the greatest advantages of regular meditation is that it enhances your intuition. And when I was here last time, I told you about visualizing an ocean of light above you and channeling it into your head and coming down through you. And what you can do is you can check that out on the internet. In the back, I left slips of paper with the internet address so you don't have to scramble to write it down right now. I want to tell you though, www.lightchannels.com/channeling.html. So it's really easy. www.lightchanneling.com/channeling.html. And there you will be able to look at this image. It's like, the video is like 75 seconds long. It's simple, and it'll teach you this. And you do 7 minutes a day of visualizing light. And the first time I ever did it, within 30 seconds, I was so in the zone, in a meditative state like I've never been before. So I encourage you to do that. Wow, I was right. So, it's important to know that God speaks to us every day, all day. We amplify our ability to hear that voice according to our willingness to listen and follow the guidance. The voice will impart an idea, and if we disregard that idea, the voice will quiet down. And the voice will send the impulse again, but if we disregard the message, it's like we've turned the radio volume way down and the voice grows faint. However, if we pay attention, the voice amplifies. So the more we listen and follow, the louder and the clearer that the voice gets. In the Science of Mind textbook, the spirit within us is God, and only to the degree that we listen to and seek to obey this spirit shall we really succeed. So all we need to do, and it's really simple, is to tune into our intuition and declare, I am listening. You may want to say, God, I am listening. I am listening. Say it with me. I am listening. I am listening. I am listening. I am listening. Fabulous. Eric Butterworth, you're familiar with Eric Butterworth? Great unity teacher, right? Just unity rules. And it's another New Thought religion. Back in the 90s, he was still going strong teaching over in New York City. Prolific author. If you can pick up Discover the Power Within is one of the, what can we say about that book? It's one of the foremost books in New Thought that teaches practical spirituality. He said, what he did, he would just close his eyes and softly say with assurance, Father, I am listening. He'd just get still and say, Father, I'm listening. And then he wrote about this technique. You will find marvelous guidance manifested in you. You will feel a sense of conviction, a sense of assurance, a sense of spontaneity, and you will be led. Okay, I want to tell you some stories about people who followed their intuition. There was a young man, he'd been to a class on practical spirituality and Bible study, and the minister has spoken about divine guidance and having the willingness to listen to God within. And this guy couldn't help but wonder, would God speak to me? You know, so he was thinking, and after class, they went out with friends from some coffee, and they talked about intuition. And it was about 10 o'clock, and the guy starts driving home. And he's sitting in his car. He began to declare and pray, God, I am listening. God, I will listening. So he's driving down the street, and he has this thought to stop and get a gallon of milk. And he thinks, well, that's a little wacky thought. And he said, God, how do I know it's you? And he didn't get a reply, so he went home. But this persistent urge and thought to get a gallon of milk. So he said, you know what? I'm going to get a gallon of milk. What have I got to lose? I can always use milk. So he gets the milk, and then he drives away, and he passes 7th Street. And he gets the urge to turn down the street. But he thought, come on, this is crazy. And he drives past the intersection. However, he felt he should really turn down 7th Street. So he turned back, he headed around, and half jokingly, he said out loud, okay, God, I am listening. Several drops he drove, it's a true story, and he stops. And he feels like he should stop. And he pulls over and he looks around. It was a semi-commercial area of town. It wasn't the best, it wasn't the worst part of town. The businesses are closed and many of the houses look dark. He was thinking people are probably in bed. But he sensed something, and it was go give the milk to the people in the house across the street. Now at this time, he's like, oy vey, shmir. And like, oh, this is insane. People are asleep. I'm going to wake them up. I'm going to look like this is crazy. But he felt, by this time, he's really feeling the intuition. He goes, gets out of the car, he knocks on the house, he goes, okay, God, I'm doing it. He walks across the street, he rings the bell, he hears some noise inside, a man's voice shuts out, who is it? What do you want? And then the door opens before the guy could run away. And the man was standing there in jeans and t-shirt. He looked like he'd just gotten out of bed. He had this weird look on his face. He didn't seem too happy to have some stranger at his door. And he says, what is it? And the young man thrust the gallon of milk at him. He goes, here, I brought you this. The man grabbed the milk, rushed down the hall speaking loudly in Spanish. And then from the hallway came a woman carrying the milk towards the kitchen. And then the man came following her holding a baby, and the baby was crying. And the man had tears streaming down his face. And the man began half speaking and half crying and saying, we were just praying. We had some bills this month, and we couldn't afford any food because we ran out of money, and we didn't have any milk for our baby. And we were just praying and asking God to bring us some milk. And his wife in the kitchen yelled out, I asked God to send an angel with some milk. Are you an angel? And the young man opened his wallet, took out all the money he had, gave it to the guy. He turned away with tears streaming down his face. Why? Because he followed his intuition. Isn't that a great story? There's a story, too, from Mary Manon Morrissey's book, Building Your Field of Dreams. And there's a chapter titled Guidance, Recognize the Voice of Inspired Insight. And in this chapter, she shares a letter that one of the congregants wrote to her describing how listening and acting upon her inner voice, guiding her towards fulfilling a dream job. And so she said, I was desperate, I lost my job, I was lonely, I didn't know what to do. And she had heard about a singles potluck, but she really wasn't into going. But she kept getting this nudge and urge to attend. And so she said, yeah, you know what, it's an hour late, I'm not going. And even if I got there, I'm late, I'm not going. But the nudging. Now, I love sirens because I always think when I hear sirens that it's somehow the universe talking to me and telling me to pay attention to what I'm thinking about or talking about. Now, that may say wacky to you, but I believe that. It's like a validation. So she thinks, I'm not going. But she can't resist the nudging. It keeps nudging and nudging. So she said, you know what? If I'm going to practice following the voice within, I've got to go. If I'm late, I'm late. So she raced to the store, for some chips and dips, and she arrives there. There's only a couple of seats left, and she decides to sit next to this lady who just happens to be looking for an employee with her skills and background. She gets a job. She concluded her letter. The voice said, go, and all I had to do is what I was told. It is a spiritual truth that our inner guidance system, our intuition, is always available to help us move towards our highest good anytime we choose to listen. Listen and you will be led. Mary Maron Morrissey said you will be told very specifically, remember, God can do for us only what God can do through us. It's important to know that you only receive intuition on an ad-needed basis. You don't receive your intuition for 2 weeks away today. It doesn't happen. It's on an ad. Think about the Old Testament. Remember the psalmist sings to God, your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. Now, think about it. When you're carrying a lantern at night, the path ahead is illumined just 1 or 2 steps at a time, right? And if you take action and go towards the edge of the light that you see, and you take a step, even a small step, only then will the light show you the next step. You have to take action. You have to continue to move forward. But you know what happens? We want to know all the details up front. We don't want lanterns. We want spotlights. We want floodlights. We want to know everything in advance. You know why that is? That's because of our ego. Our ego is always edging God out. Our ego wants to know and be in charge rather than letting the voice of the divine guide us. So you do not get divine guidance today for what you'll need next week, because Spirit always works in the now moment. Okay. So you may wonder, how do I know if it's you, God? Well, there's a couple ideas to answer that question. The voice of God is always a voice of love. In the New Testament, it says God is love. Can't get any simpler than that. The voice of God never condemns. It always empowers. It's not punitive. There's no discipline. You can say, is this harm anybody? No one or no thing intentionally? Does it bring joy, peace, and love? I want to end with a story, a very powerful story by Genevieve Barond. Are you familiar with Genevieve Barond? She was listening to her intuition. She wanted to become one of Thomas Troward's only steward. Who knows Thomas Troward? Judge Thomas Troward. Judge Thomas Troward, if you were studying becoming a New Thought prayer chaplain or practitioner or minister, you would study Thomas Troward. Dr. Thomas Troward, he, from England, moved to Africa, became a judge. He, very important in the New Thought movement. He influenced so many people in the beginning. Dr. Ernest Holmes and the Fillmores and on. He wrote The Creative Process in the Individual, the Dore Lectures, the Edinburgh Lectures. He wrote The Hidden Power, The Law and the Word, and on and on. Genevieve Barond wanted to study with Troward. Troward didn't take any students. No students. So she started corresponding with him, and she said, can I write to you? And he said, yeah, you can, but no, I'm not taking any students. And so after a couple of months of correspondence, Troward proposed a question in her letter, and this was the question. What do you suppose is the meaning of this verse in the 21st chapter of Revelations? And the city lieth foursquare, and the length is as large as the breadth. And he measured the city, and with the reed 12,000 furlongs. The length and the breadth and the height of it are equal. Now, she had no idea. She had no clue what this meant. But she knew something intuitively. She knew that if she replied with the correct answer, this would be her key to becoming Troward's students. She got busy. She wrote everybody. She wrote doctors. She wrote lawyers, priests, nuns, clergymen, all over the world. She got all these letters, but she just knew the answer wasn't right. She prayed, she meditated, and then she thought, well, I'm going to go look for some of those books that Troward told me to read. So she goes to this bookstore, and she's looking. The books were out of print, so she's talking to the clerk, wanting to buy a book, but the price is too high. She's haggling with the clerk, and out of the corner of her eye, she sees a book on astrology, and she jokingly says, gee, I wonder if that person would read my horoscope. And the clerk in horror said, what, are you kidding, madam? That's one of France's greatest astrologers. He does not read horoscopes. Despite this, something inside of her said, go see him. And she did. She followed her intuition. Now, she didn't know what to say to him, really, because she didn't really want a horoscope read. But she said to him, will you read my horoscope? And he was aghast. He said, no, madam, I do not read horoscopes. And with that, she couldn't think of any further reason to say. Her friend is halfway out the door. And she hesitated from getting up in the chair. Something told her, stay seated. Suddenly, the man's cat, named Jack, jumps up on her lap. And she starts petting the cat, and the professor, in a split second, says, wow, madame, my cat pleads for you. My cat Jack pleads for you. Now I have an interest in your horoscope, and if you'll give me the data, I will write it out for you. Please come back next Sunday. She comes back next Sunday, and, you know, she sits down, and she has the horoscope, and she takes it. Then she suddenly gets the impulse to ask the question about the information from Revelations. The guy pauses, no pause, and says, the city signifies the truth, and the truth is non-invertible. Every side from which you approach it is exactly the same. Genevieve Barond wrote in her book, Your Invisible Power, I suggest you read it, on page 62, intuitively and undoubtedly, I recognized this answer as the true one, and my joy knew no bounds because I felt sure that with this correct answer in my possession, Troward would accept me as his pupil in the fall. She wrote the answer to Troward, and immediately was his reply, your answer is correct. I'm beginning a course on lectures on the Great Pyramids in London. If you wish to attend them, it would be my pleasure to have you. And afterwards, if you still wish to study with me, I think it can be arranged. She became Troward's first and only student. This, my friend, is the power of intuition. It's really quite simple to call forth your intuition. Make the declaration, I am listening. The last time I was here, I explained to you the meaning of those two words, I am. Simply put, I am is the name of God within you, because no one can say I am for you. And so when you're saying I am, you're saying it's my nature to be. And so when you're saying I am listening, you are evoking the power of God and declaring it is my nature to listen to the voice of God within me. So I call upon you today to evoke your intuition and declare, I am listening. I am listening. I am listening. I am listening. So begin your lesson. Love you. Thank you. Love you.